everybody? Man, I hadn't heard from y'all forever. Oh, wait a minute. I'm one that posted videos, so technically y'all haven't heard from me in forever. Just saying what's up, guys. I'm honestly, as of next week, we'll be approaching the 90-day mark without 7-hydroxy. I would say that's a pretty big milestone. You know, it gets talked a lot about how you get through the acute withdrawals from something like 7-hydroxy or, you know, kratom or anything else that has like an opiate type effect, right? What it doesn't get talked about as much is how to stay off of it long term, right? Because a lot of people on the channel, and including myself, was seduced by this idea, especially at first, that, dude, if I can just get through that first, 7 days, man, if I can get through that first 7 days where it's, where my body is just, physical body is just being torn apart by these really, really acute withdrawals and the sickness that you feel and all the other things that go along with it, the low energy, the depression, the mood swings, the diarrhea, the cold chills, the sneezing, the watery eyes, all these little things that go along with what we know as acute withdrawals. If I can just get past that, man, I'm golden. I'm good, I'm in the clear. And I don't mean to scare the shit out of anybody, but that's not really true. Because once you get past those acute withdrawals, then comes the post-acute withdrawals. Now, a lot of people will swear that post-acute withdrawals is just a myth, but I don't think they are. And the reason I say that is because you can't really put your finger on post-acute withdrawals the way you can acute withdrawals. Like, by example, if you have acute withdrawals and one of your symptoms is explosive diarrhea, you can put your finger on that. Just don't put it in it or on it, really. But you can identify that as a symptom. Well, I know I'm in acute withdrawals because 2 days ago, before I stopped taking this substance, I didn't have diarrhea. Now I have diarrhea. There's a symptom, right? I can see that. I can smell it. All those things. So, but then post-acute withdrawals are somewhat different because they involve things like just boredom. Feeling as though you've lost a best friend. And people describe this feeling quite a lot when they're coming off of something like kratom or 7-hydroxy or something, or any substance that you've been using daily and regularly for a long period of time. They describe it almost like, that first relationship you ever had where you felt like you were in love and then you break up with that person, right? You remember how hard that was to not reach out to them, to not call them every day. You were so behaviorally addicted to that person, much like you are this substance. So you feel very much like you've lost an important piece of you, right? An important part of you, a best friend, family member, that sort of thing. And a lot of people report feeling that way, which is one of the things that makes it really hard. So I think that's why it's really important to replace those feelings, with other positive things, other hobbies. Like if you like music, start getting back into music. If you like sports, if sports is one of your things, start doing sports again, right? If you've always wanted to take up golf, take the money that you would be spending on kratom and pick up a golf habit. Start playing golf, a couple times a week. There's all different types of things that you can do if you've always wanted to learn to play an instrument. Well, get yourself some lessons. to learn to play the guitar or the piano or whatever it is, right? And well, to add to that, a spiritual life always seems to be of utmost importance when it comes to losing a best friend. You know, you have to have something else that you can look to and depend on, including a group of people. Some people will use AA, NA, organizations like that. I don't personally do that. Brainwashing always tends to kind of have a negative connotation to it. But if we can separate that negative connotation to it and just realize kind of what it means technically, I'll just say, you know, NA and AA tend to kind of brainwash people into believing, whether it's right or wrong, whether it's true or false, that you cannot successfully use any sort of mind-altering substance, because if you do, you eventually will fully go down that rabbit hole of addiction again, right? So they're very clear on that in the NA and AA space. And, you know, I'm one of those people. I still want to be able to have a drink from time to time if I want to. That's never really been a weakness of mine. And I was just one of those people that from the get-go, I couldn't see not ever again using some sort of substance. That's just, you know, right, wrong, indifferent, stupid, whatever it is, I wasn't going to do that. And there's a lot of people that kind of feel that way. So if you're not going to use that sort of thing, then I think some sort of spiritual based principles are important, you know, whether that be a church, or whether that just be some really, really good cognitive behavioral therapy, making sure that you create new habits for yourself and then continue to reinforce those habits daily. So if you have this certain drug of choice that you know that you can't use anymore, you need to replace that with something else that is going to be a positive outlet for you. Okay? So that's how you get through the long term, you know, making some positive spiritual and cognitive behavioral sort of changes, right? And that does take work. It really does take work. But I just kind of wanted to throw this out there because a lot of people, especially if you're new to the whole substance use and substance abuse, or maybe you've never used something like kratom before, you know, something that gives you those opiate sort of feels. I get it. It's not an opioid. I always have to say that as a disclaimer because I have so many trolls that come on. If you dare call kratom an opioid, kratom's not an opioid. It's blah, 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 blah. My whole thing is, it is what it acts like. Just like they say, you are what you eat. It is what it acts like. And it acts like an opioid in every sense of the word. So some people will say it's not an opioid because opioid is specific to like the poppy plant, basically. You know, it's named directly after. So you can call it, but then there's a larger spectrum of opiate-like substances that do the same sort of thing. So more appropriate to call kratom an opiate than it is an opioid. Okay, it can't be an opioid because that's specific to a specific type of plant, right? Either way, splitting hairs here. I just want everybody to realize that you know, getting through the several first few days of the acute withdrawals, and everyone's are different. You know, some people may 2-3 days and they're kind of past the acute part of it, right? But then you have others who are on heavier amounts and have been using it for a longer period of time, or periods of time, like myself. It dragged on. My acute withdrawals lingered for, you know, several weeks, to be honest with you. I don't mean to scare anybody, and I was taking quite a lot. And that's not to say that they didn't get better and start to get incrementally better by little bits and pieces every day. By example, you know, my 20th day was definitely better than my 8th or 9th or 10th day. But on the 20th day, I was still having some mild sort of physical acute withdrawals and discomforts, especially related to my sleep at night and stuff like that, and especially related to even the energy piece of it, low energy, right? But to let people know on the channel, you know, believe it or not, though it might be more intensely difficult during that first stage of the acute withdrawals, you might never be in any more physical pain than you will be during that first several days of the acute withdrawals. But that doesn't mean that overall it's the hardest part of getting off of a substance. Getting off of it, in my opinion, is easy compared to staying off of substances, right? Now, I've been able to stay off of kratom, but you know, I have been using other things, THC gummies here and there, although I don't do that daily because it kind of gives me, like, you know, a little bit of anxiety, which I'm not a fan of. And I will drink maybe a couple of times during the week, a couple of times on the weekend. Nothing big. I'm not a big drinker, but I do drink from time to time. So, you know, staying off long term, if you're planning on being completely abstinent from every mind-altering substance, probably need to go to AA, NA, something like Smart Recovery or something like that. Outside the rest of it, I just want you guys to be aware of that. Those are some things that you can do to kind of help yourself out long term to stay off of it. You literally just have to change the way you live and retrain your mind to think in different ways. So instead of craving this substance to get some sort of little mood boost, you know, you crave this new hobby that you've begun, or a new sport that you've been playing, or this new instrument that you're trying to learn, that sort of thing. Whether it be relationships, spirituality, attending the church, you know, all those things. So those are all things that you can do to kind of help create, you know, cut out new niches for yourself. Exercise. I've heard a lot of people say when they give up the substances, they pick up exercise, and then that kind of becomes their new addiction. Now, that can be a detriment because people who have sort of addictive mindsets can become completely addicted to where they're doing it all the time, too much, that sort of thing. That was never really a problem with me. I do it several days a week, exercise, but I've never been one of those people that just, you know, 2 times a day, 4 hours a day, every day, 7 days a week, I'm exercising. Like, no, that's too much. If you eat right, and then you exercise maybe 4 days a week, that's plenty. Doesn't have to be any more than that. But yeah, a few tidbits for you guys. Hope you're all out there doing well. Anyone who's trying to come off of kratom or 7-hydroxy, I'm pulling for you. I'm here, able to offer, you know, willing to offer any help that you might need regarding it. And yeah, that's it. Subscribe to the channel if you would like the video, and I will see you guys on the next one. Thanks so much for watching. Peace.